Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking, and great to have you along for another episode of Classic Fights. Now, going to bring in my co-hosts who just happen to be the two birthday boys, not today but yesterday, Grant Tassie Brown and Peter Maniatis. How are we, guys?
No, good thanks, to be on the show, Lyndon.
Now, I've just found out that you guys actually share a birthday, February 6th.
February 7th.
7th. Did you just say 6th?
No. Tassie was, it's Feb 7. Everyone thought
Tassie's
it was
Feb 6th.
It's on his Facebook, February 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, whatever day it was, happy birthday to you both. Tassie 2 days ago, Pete yesterday. So, happy birthday, boys. Tassie, good to have you back, mate. And we've got a great fight tonight because it's back to me. And who did we have last week, Pete? It was Ferrari and Zarate, which is a good fight as well.
Zarate, yeah, that was a ripper.
And Tassie, so this week, as I said, it's my pick. I've gone with Aaron Pryor versus Alexis Arguello for the WBA Junior Welterweight Championship. You can see there that it took place on November 12th, 1982. So, do you remember much about the fight, Tassie? You only would have been a young fella then, only 5 or 6 years old, but you've obviously watched it back on replay.
Yeah, I don't obviously remember it live, but I mean I've watched it heaps of times. I love both fighters, Pryor and Arguello, and this was the coming out party for Pryor because Pryor was always trying to get a big name. Like he beat Tommy Hearns as an amateur. And he was trying to get Leonard, and he crashed Leonard's press conferences. And Leonard and Hearns, they weren't interested in Aaron Pryor because his profile, his risk to reward wasn't much. Like he was a dangerous fighter, but he wasn't big in the American public. So he wasn't. He couldn't get those big money fights. This was his big one to land the three division world champion, Alexis Arguello, a hero in his country, Nicaragua. Big with all the Latino fans across the world. So this was a big one, mate. And it was just a great fight between two in their own right, two of the best, of all time.
Certainly were. And Pete, as Tassie said then Aaron Pryor had the amateur win over Thomas Hearns, but he really struggled to sort of get in the mainstream. He'd actually had 2 fights, one against Sugar Ray Leonard, one against Roberto Duran, that had actually fallen over prior to this fight, excuse the pun, and this was his first real crack at a legend, even though Arguello was obviously coming up in weight again.
Yeah, but back then it was a massive fight. I'm pretty sure Top Rank promoted that. Bob Arum. I'm pretty sure it was Bob Arum, and it was just massive at the time. It was a good fight for Pryor. Obviously, he was looking for bigger name fighters, but Alex Arguello, I mean, what? How can you compare him? He was such a warrior, and at the time, it was just such a massive fight. 2 big characters. Maybe it deserved more publicity than it actually got. As far as mainstream people, the boxing people obviously appreciated it heaps, but it didn't hit the mainstream as much as it should have.
I remember watching this fight later on, a few years after. This is long before YouTube was around. So I remember our local video store, and you're right, Pete, it was Top Rank because they actually bought out a whole range of videotapes. I don't know whether you can remember it. They bought out about 30 different fights. I remember walking in, I can't remember what they were called. They had a title. They might have been called Classic Fights. I can't remember.
Everyone.
No, championship fights. Nick Hatzel used to have a store in Preston, and I used to go. I was remembering when I visited, and that's how I got to watch, Marvin Hagler, Vito de Firmo, all these kind of fights.
So many great fights, because, as I said, I remember walking in there and there's a whole row of these fights, and there's a young, bright-eyed boxing fan who'd always read about these fights in magazines, but you could never watch them and actually be able to go in there and rent them up. Tassie, you were probably like me, you're probably in there 10 times a day renting the videos, but we got through, and I remember watching this fight. There were others there, like you said, Pete. There was Hagler, and I think there was Tony against Tony Simpson, and there was all these classic fights I remember, but this was one of them, and what an awesome fight. I remember watching it, and it's still sort of burning my brain from all those years ago that I'm surprised I haven't actually bought it up before then, but it was a great fight. Tassie, you're obviously the same. Did your local video shop had all those videos, did they?
Best memories, mate. I'd go down there and I'd sometimes pre-order them if any new ones coming out, and kid in the candy store, mate. And I remember, watching them with my dad because we we only had an old TV and that, but we go back and I watch, he'd seen the fights probably live back in the day at the pub, but we watched these old fights together and, some of the best memories of my life, mate, going to those old video stores.
Yeah, it does bring back some memories, and same with you, Pete. You're obviously the same age as me, but were you the same thing? You wouldn't have got to see it back then. Was it actually? I probably wasn't even on TV back then, but
no. Yeah, as I said, Nick Hatzel would have a store in Preston, and everyone would go there. And he was a former professional fighter. He was a Victorian super lightweight champion. So we, from my place in Albert Park to Preston was a bit of a hike. So we'd get 5 or 6, watch them all, watch them twice again, go back, get another 5 or 6. And back then I used to get a pad and score them as well. And it was always, especially over the holidays, we'd always, but not only would I grab the 6 videos, I'd probably sit there for 2 or 3 hours biting Hatzel's ear off just with information and trying to get other things and stuff. Because I remember he said once that that Marvin Hagler would beat Rocky Marciano, and I said, mate, you've got to be kidding. There's a massive weight difference.
Just a little
and I remember we argued about that and he just said, no, I think Marvin would have just been able to beat Marciano.
Yeah,
so,
but look, the crowd from these days will never know the pain, will they, Tassie, of not being able to, not only not being able to watch the fights, but even the boxing magazines, the KOs and the World Boxing and all the rest of them would come out. And we'd think they were only last week, but they were actually 3 or 4 months down the track. So these young kids today will never know what we went through back in the day as fight fans.
Man, my local news agency in Hobart, I had a good relationship with the guy, and I'd pre-order him. I'd have the Fist, KO, Ring, Boxing Monthly. I'd have them all there. I was his best customer when it comes to the boxing magazines. I had them all there every month for every year. I still got them all now. But that was just awesome, mate. And as you said, we thought we were getting the news straight. It was 3 or 4 months old. But I mean, just again,
6 or 7 different magazines. So as I said at the start, this fight, as you can see there, was billed as the Ring of Fire or the Battle of the Champions. It was a top-ranked event. November 12th, 1982 at the Orange Bowl in Miami. Pryor had a 31-0 record with 29 KOs. Arguello had a record of 76-4 with 62 KOs. So what we might actually do is we'll get the video started as we talk more about it. And Pete, I'm not sure whether you can remember this, but there was actually a couple of controversies with the fight. The first one was obviously the magic bottle, which we'll talk about a little bit later as the fight goes on. But the other one that I didn't actually know about until I researched a bit further was there was actually an intruder before the fight that tried to get into Alexis Arguello's change room, and he had a weapon on him. They didn't actually say what it was, but he was actually stopped at the door, and Arguello had to rush into the bathroom and with all his security and that sort of stuff. So right from the word go, there was controversy, and then of course later on in the fight with the magic bottle.
Yeah, no, I remember the magic bottle. I didn't know about the intruder though. That's a new one. That tends to happen. I mean, you get wackos now and then going to fights. What can you do? Happens in all sports.
Well, I think Tassie, that don't they know that most entourages go to fights these days with some sort of weapon? They're all in the mafia or bikies or something these days, aren't they?
Yeah, well, there's been too much violence at the boxing, even in Australia, little known America. I mean, so
it just attracts that element, doesn't it?
It does, but Aaron Pryor started he's a fast starter, and I think he wanted to really start a fast pace. Arguello was the older man. I think they wanted to really work those old legs, and he really started off. I mean, he was like that anyway in most fights, but he's a very fast starter and really, really, really put it on you, Pryor. He did,
didn't he? You can see there in the vision here that this is the first round, I think, here, and he's just jumped straight on him. And you've got a feeling that Arguello is probably not really sure what's hit him there, Pete. Obviously, Pryor was a fast starter normally, but even this one was even faster than usual.
Yeah, and as you go into the fight, you could see that Arguello starts to balance up a bit because Pryor started really fast, and that's a great way to start these kind of fights. So get some early rounds in the bank.
Yeah, and I think too, Tassie, the fact that Arguello was coming up into his fourth division, we forgot to actually mention that he was actually going for his fourth belt in this one. He'd been the super featherweight, lightweight,
featherweight.
Sorry, yeah. So he'd been featherweight, super featherweight, and lightweight world champion, and was going for the WBA Junior Welterweight title here. Do you think that had something to do with the reason Pryor started fast? It was really, or maybe it was just to, get a few of the nerves out of the system, maybe.
I think more so. Just being the older fighter, I think that they really wanted to test out his stamina, test out his legs, and with any sort of young guy fighting an old fighter, you really want to make him use those legs, and you really want to make him count. So, and they knew that Arguello, which he did once the pace sort of slowed down, his boxing skills were very, I think, on another level to Pryor's, technically. So once the pace slowed down, he has some success. But but I remember Arguello beat the great Ruben Olivares for the featherweight title. And I think that was his first belt. And as you know, knocked out Boom Boom Mancini at lightweight, and just a legend.
I think, Pete, one of the reasons too why he started so quickly and he's giving him those angles as well is because Arguello, even though he's a lot taller than most of his opponent, liked to take centre ring, liked to get the range, liked for you to stand right in front of him and he'd obviously land that big right hand. But if you look at Pryor carefully, he's giving him angles, he's in, he's out, he's under, he's over, he's left, he's right. So probably not a bad strategy by Aaron Pryor.
Yeah, and you could just see he was trying to make a statement. Obviously, before this fight, he wanted the big names. He couldn't get the big names. And this was his moment to shine. And he had the limelight in front of him and he wanted to go for it. He wasn't going to, come out half-hearted. He was going 100%. And when the fight settled down, he started to box more. I thought he looked a lot better for mine. I mean, it was a risky beginning because he could have got caught as well.
Yeah, well, you can see the pace of the fight there, Tassie. We're only just starting round 3, and it already looks like they've gone 7 or 8 rounds, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was non-stop. You know what I mean? And Pryor just kept attacking. And as I said, Arguello had to weather the storm, but he's so experienced and such a champion that he does, start coming into the fight more as we go on. But what can you do when you got someone like Pryor who's just non-stop and so tough? Like you'll see Pryor take some massive shots that no one else would really take from Arguello, but he walks through him.
Do you think, Pete, that in hindsight the weight factor finally got to Arguello? I mean, there's other great fighters that were able to do it, but you just get the feeling here, and there's actually a beautiful right hand he hits Pryor with later in the fight that should have knocked him out, but he barely even took a backward steps. Do you think the weight sort of caught up with him in the end after coming up from featherweight?
Yeah, especially in the days where you normally would just stick to one weight class. In the old days, you'd get maybe a boxer move 1 or 2 weight classes, but most of them would just stick to 1 or 2 weight classes. Him to jump up to his 4th weight class in this fight, wasn't it? So, it's a pretty big jump up for 1981. That was, not many would do that. I remember when Jeff Fennick was jumping up in weight. In the 80s, it was sort of raising eyebrows. Everyone does it. Yeah, everyone does it now. But, I mean, Jesse Rodriguez just jumped up 2 weight classes and beat Condaras for a WBC Super Flyweight World title. So he just done it in his 13th fight. They just jump up in weight. Now, obviously, with diet and nutrition, it's a lot different. But these guys, I mean, they probably would have had a steak before the fight and stuff like that. They would have been on the old diets and on the old methods. But Arguello, I mean, it's very hard to carry your power as you move up in weight. Not many can do it, especially once you move up to your 4th weight class. Might be a bit easier now, but in the old days, that was a big factor. Does he carry the power up?
Not just that, but I mean, do we know the ages? I'm pretty sure Arguello was quite a lot older than Pryor.
Yeah, he was. I haven't got the exact ages in front of me, but I've got a feeling that Arguello might have been mid-30s. I've got a feeling Pryor might only be
I think he was more the tail end of his career.
Yeah, definitely. He only had a few more fights after. I've got a feeling Pryor was around 29 or 30. But I think what you've got to look at is the boxing age of the two. Pryor hadn't really been in a lot of wars. He'd had the 31 fights, pretty much dominated most of them, where Arguello had had the 80 fights and been in quite a lot of wars in that time. So, as you know, mate, there's the age and then there's boxing age.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. And another thing too, look, I don't want to put any negativity on the fight, but it's got to be in question, was the bottle. I mean, the trainer of Pryor was known to be, he was involved in that scandal with where he put the extra stuff on the wraps of that guy that, the things are called Paris, of what's it called? The
Plaster of Paris.
Plaster of Paris. So he's already involved in that. So he's a dishonest person, Pryor's trainer. To talk about a bottle that I mixed, there's no bottle. There's only water in boxing. So you can't have something with mix. There's no mix. It's water or zero. So I think Pryor is a great fighter regardless, but maybe something was in that bottle and it gave him that extra charge. And to walk through Arguello, and Arguello was a very humble champion. I think he even suspected something because he could see him hitting this guy with all these shots, and all of a sudden the guy just keeps coming and coming in. And so that's obviously a big question mark, which Pryor solved in the second fight. But it's got to be brought up, don't you agree?
Yeah, no, you're right. And Pete, his trainer's name was Panama Lewis, and as Tazzy said, he was involved in the Lewis Resto Billy Collins fight in '82 as well, I think it was, or '81, '82, I think it was. And in this fight, and you'll see later on, there's some highlights of him saying, "Give me the bottle that I mixed." His cornerman later said his cornerman's name was Artie Curley, was his name. It's a nice name. He claimed it was peppermint schnapps that was in it, but you're right, Tazzy. Why have you got anything in that bottle besides water, which is the legal thing to have in there? So he claimed it was peppermint schnapps to settle Pryor's stomach because he'd had stomach complaints. The interesting thing here, Pete, is that there was no post-fight urine test, which was quite convenient.
Yeah, I mean it's 1981 as well.
82.
What would 82? Sorry, yeah. What would? Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, look, Aaron Pryor had 10 fights after this, and Alex Arguello only had 4.
Yep.
So it's at the end of his career. The water stuff, look, it's anyone's guess. What could be in that water? I mean, what can you mix up? Even what we know now with sports nutrition, what could you mix up on fight night that gives you the advantage during the corner?
Well, Lewis Resto, the fighter that Tazzy said before that was involved in the scandal, he claimed it was antihistamine pills that had been broken up and put into the water for greater lung capacity in the later rounds. That's what he described it as. And if you look at this, I think it was twice during the fight that Aaron Pryor took the water. It's early in the fight, but more importantly, later in the fight. It was actually the round before the stoppage. And you see him come out and he's got that extra bit of energy about him. I don't know whether it was maybe in his mind, but whatever it was, there was definitely controversy afterwards. And Panama Lewis, as you said, Tazzy, is a known cheat and got what was coming to him because he got banned for life after this anyway.
Correct. And that young guy that was involved with he finished up killing himself. One that got
Billy Collins. Yep.
Yeah.
Which is a tragedy. And that's actually another fight. It's actually when I was watching this fight and I thought of that, Tazzy, and I thought that we might actually do that fight at some stage. It's not necessarily a classic fight, but it's definitely something that maybe not a lot of boxing fans are aware of, and it was an absolute tragedy. Pete, you can obviously remember that as well, Lewis Resto and Billy Collins. If you don't know, if you're watching that, after the fight, I think someone in Billy Collins' corner shook hands with Lewis Resto, and there was nothing in the glove. It was just pretty much bare knuckle, which is, you just imagine getting punched in the head for 10 rounds like he did, and he got battered with basically no padding. It'd be horrendous.
And that's what we got to question Margarito versus Cotto first fight as well.
Yep. Exactly.
Because he got brought undone before he fought Mosley. He got found out there. But ALEXIS Argüello eventually killed himself as well.
Yeah, which, he did. Unfortunately.
I'm not saying anything to do with the fight, but I'm just saying eventually very sad because he seemed like a really nice guy, Argüello, in his interview. He seemed like a real humble champion. He's involved. His country was going through a bit of a civil war at the time, and I think the government sort of took over his assets, and there was two rival parties, and they both used him as a poster boy.
Yep.
And he actually had to leave Nicaragua, and he set up shop in Miami.
And Pete, all the controversy aside, you've got to still look at the way Pryor's fighting, because I think, I'm not quite sure, I think we're in 11 or 12 or something here, I think. And look at the pace that he's still, there you go, up to round 13 now. So the fight would, in these days, be over. And look at the pace he's still setting right from the outset.
Yeah, massive performance from Pryor.
And to his credit too, Argüello's going with him.
This Pryor is up there, could be the best super lightweight of all time.
Yeah.
Up there with Costa Zoo. This Pryor could, you have to make an argument, this Pryor could beat anyone in his day. At super
he only
lightweight,
lost one fight.
and maybe at waterweight as well.
Yeah, well, you're right, Pete. He only lost one fight. Ring Magazine actually voted Aaron Pryor as the best junior welterweight or super lightweight of all time. That was obviously before Costa Zoo came in. I think it was about 94 or 95 or something that he was voted that. But you saw that right hand there, Pete, and you look at Aaron Pryor, did not even budge and hit him right down the pipe.
That could have been Pryor's good jaw as well. I mean, he's tough.
Yeah.
Not only has he got good boxing skills, he's super tough as well.
Yeah, well, it was, as I said, Tassie, looking just, it could even be a dream fight we do down the track, but Costa Zoo and Aaron Pryor, do you think Aaron Pryor's really the only fighter out there that could have any cause whatsoever to make an argument against Costa as the greatest junior welterweight of all time?
Well, I mean, when you talk about, you got to talk about what they've done in that division. So there's no use talking about someone who maybe had one fight in the division or had two fights like Floyd or whatever. It's who made the defences and who Costa Zoo unified the division, obviously.
Yeah.
And Pryor, obviously, had many defences. So that's what comes into the conversation. I mean, that's why we talk about Duran and Whittaker at lightweight, because they unified it and made plenty of defences. So,
And there's the end of the fight there. So, yeah, Aaron Pryor, 14th round knockout. As I said, it was voted, actually, I don't think I said it, it was voted Ring Magazine Junior Welterweight, the greatest of all time. But that fight was actually the fight of the decade, voted by Ring Magazine. Now, interestingly, the scorecards at the time of the stoppage, Pete, Pryor was ahead 127, 124 on two cards. He was behind 125, 127 on the other card. Now, to put that in rounds up till round 13, that's 6 rounds to 3 with 4 rounds even. The other judge had 5 rounds even. That's just amazing to think that they could have so many even rounds in one fight.
Even rounds. Yeah. Well, what do? You should score one even round every 30 rounds. If you can't really pick a round, don't be a judge. Even rounds, it's just not.
Yeah, and you're right. There might be one round here, or in a 15-round fight, maybe 2, but to have 5 even rounds after 13 rounds, I just think it's crazy. But the fact that all 3 judges, maybe it was the norm back then with judging. If in doubt, just score it even and don't even try and get a winner. Now, Tassie, they had a rematch 10 months later, September 9th, 1983. It was at the Mecca of Boxing, Caesars Palace in Vegas. Pryor got the stoppage in round 10, but it probably just failed to live up to the classic that this one was.
Yeah, I think, Arguello, I guess, was really, after that last fight, really sort of at his end. And, he was game, obviously, but I mean, I think Pryor at that stage, just a beast, mate. And, it was, obviously disappointing to see Arguello go out like that, but then again, you've got the pass of the torch. I think that's these guys had, with Arguello being the 3-division champion and a legend, passing the torch to Aaron Pryor, who went on and pretty much destroyed everyone.
And Pete, there was a little bit of, I won't say controversy, but an aside to the rematch is that Arguello fired Eddie Futch as his trainer. He blamed Eddie Futch for the loss. I don't know how you could blame anyone except yourself in that instance. I think he just came up against a better fighter on the night. As we mentioned during the video, Panama Lewis, who was Pryor's trainer, lost his license, and he brought in Emmanuel Stewart. So it's interesting that both of them came in with different trainers, and end of the day, I suppose, it was the same result. But
Yeah. It's I mean,
well,
look.
and,
Go ahead.
go, Pete.
No, I was going to say the other factor is though as well that Pryor was a younger fighter the first time, and Arguello was getting older. And in rematches, the younger guy tends to improve more, and the older guy doesn't improve as much.
And Tassie,
when you have a rematch.
Sorry, Pete. I was going to say Tassie, and then after this, they both technically retired. Even Pryor retired. Now, when I say retired, it's with the quote marks, but he relinquished the WBA title. This is after the rematch. Relinquished it because he didn't want to fight the number one challenger, which at the time was Johnny Bumpus, who was a really good fighter back in the day. He was out for about 18 months, came back and won the IBF version of the title against Gary Hinton in Canada. But then, strangely, he had a 2-year layoff, and that's when he came back and lost his first fight to Bobby Joe Young, 7th round stoppage. Questionable 2 stoppage, by the way. It was an odd count because he was up, he was down, he was up again, and he was counted out. But anyway, but only really had 3 more wins. He finished with a 39-1 record with 35 KOs, and then in 1990 he had to retire because he only had one good eye. He'd lost vision in the other eye.
I think there was a lot of talk about the lifestyle he led.
Cocaine issues, yep.
He had a massive entourage. He had a massive entourage, and I used to say it's hawk time. It's hawk time. And I think it was from Cincinnati. I think he probably didn't do the right things, alcohol and drugs, like a lot of fighters. And I think he sort of made a bit of money. And I guess, you can take the guy from the street, but not the street out of the guy. So I think that was the problem with him. So I think he sort of didn't go on like a Floyd Mayweather clean living. And I think he was a bit different there. And a Ray Leonard clean living. I think Pryor had those problems, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot more, I suppose, that shows than just having great talent. You've also got to have the brain and the discipline to have a long career. And just with Aaron Pryor, even though he had retired in 1990 with one vision in his eye, he was inducted in the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1996 and tragically died in 2016. But as we mentioned during the video there, he was voted the Ring Magazine greatest junior welterweight of all time prior to Costa Tszyu. Pete, Alexis Arguello had the 2-year layoff after this fight, came back, had another 2 fights. One of them was actually an impressive 4th round knockout of former world champion Billy Costello. Seemed like he was going to kick on again and retired again, was out for 8 more years, came back for 2 more fights, lost a really disappointing decision to a guy named Scott Walker, 10th round decision, retired in 1995 with a 77-8 record with 62 KOs. He was in the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 92, flag bearer for Nicaragua in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and unfortunately passed away in 2009 with self-inflicted gun wound. So really sad end to his life and his career. Yeah.
But 2 great characters there. And the 2 fights will be remembered for a very long time, especially the first one. I think we're blessed to be able to have them and be able to go back and watch them.
Yeah, for sure. And Tassie, with Arguello, he was actually voted the Ring Magazine greatest junior lightweight of all time and the Ring Magazine greatest featherweight of all time. They were about 20 odd years ago, so maybe a lot's happened since then. But either way you say it, this was a fight between 2 all-time greats, and they delivered on the night.
Yeah, well, I think like we had, I think I had one of the dream fights a while ago. I had Arguello versus Chavez, and that's the sort of. So look, even though it was that long ago, that's how good he was to even be thought of as the greatest featherweight or super, because there've been plenty of good featherweights and super lightweights up until this. So to even be thought about as one of the best, even top 3, it shows what a great fighter he was. And it's sad that both men aren't longer with us. That's very sad. And but a great pick. It was a great fight. Great 2 fights. 2 of the greatest of all time.
100%. And they were definitely 2 of the greatest. And if you haven't watched the fight, make sure you jump on YouTube and check it out. It's available there. It's 14 just unbelievable, hectic, non-stop rounds. So as it says in the title, a classic fight. So Tassie and Pete, thanks again for being part of the episode.
We need Tassie's pick.
Yeah, I think
we need Tassie's pick for next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a good one, guys, and it's sort of funny we haven't done this yet. Jeff Fennick and Zuma Nelson won.
Oh, it's been on my list for a while, but you beat me to it. Great fight to have on. What do you reckon, Pete?
No, he beat me to it too.
Yeah,
I've
I had
been
it on
thinking
my
about
list
it.
there for a while. I'll tell you what would be
I
great.
always beat you to it, Pete. I always beat you to it. I'm up at 5. You get up at 8.
He even beat you by a day on your birthday too, Pete. But he's on the redemption for this week with the quiz. But I'll tell you what would be great is to actually get Jeff Fennick's point of view in this fight. So I might actually reach out to Jeff and see whether he can make a few comments on the fight. It'd be great.
Let's do that. Yeah, try and get him. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
It's a dream fight. Oh, not the legendary fight.
Classic fight.
And we love it. Your input on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right then, guys. All right, that's a great choice, Tassie. Look forward to that next week. Jeff Fennick versus Azuma Nelson. Won Las Vegas in, I think it was June 28th, 1991 from memory. So I look forward to having that one. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, Lindo.